The sky turned black over Seoul as the giant ships appeared. Commander Hae-jin stood on the roof of the military base, watching hundreds of alien vessels block out the sun. Each ship was the size of a city, covered in strange metal that seemed to bend light around it. "Sir, we're getting reports from all over the world," his radio crackled. "New York, London, Tokyo, they're everywhere." Hae-jin gripped his rifle tighter. He had been a soldier for 15 years, but nothing had prepared him for this. The ships hung in the air like dark clouds, silent and threatening. Then the weapons fired. Beams of purple light shot down from the ships. Where they touched the ground, everything turned to dust. Buildings that had stood for decades vanished in seconds. People running in the streets simply disappeared, leaving only empty clothes behind. "All units fall back to the underground bunkers," Hae-jin shouted into his radio. "This is not a drill." Dr. Sora was in her laboratory when the attack began. She was studying blood samples when the building shook. Through her window, she saw the purple beams cutting through the city like a hot knife through butter. Her hands trembled as she grabbed her research files. "The children," she whispered. "I have to get to the children." Sora ran through the hospital corridors. She was a doctor, not a soldier, but she had to help. The children's ward was in chaos. Nurses were trying to move sick kids to the basement. Some children were crying, others were too scared to make any sound. "Dr. Sora," called Nurse Yun-hee. "The elevators are broken. We need to carry them down the stairs." Sora picked up a little girl who couldn't walk. The child's name was Mi-young, and she had been fighting cancer for months. "Now she might die from something much worse. Don't worry," Sora told her softly. "We're going somewhere safe." But as they reached the basement, Sora wondered if anywhere on Earth was safe anymore. In Tokyo, the aliens landed their smaller ships in the streets. The creatures that came out looked like giant insects walking on two legs. They had 4 arms, black shells covering their bodies and eyes like red jewels. They carried weapons that shot the same purple light as their big ships. Young soldier Minho crouched behind an overturned car, watching the aliens march through the city. They moved like they were looking for something specific. When they found groups of people hiding, they would surround them and fire their weapons. No one was spared. Minho's radio buzzed. "This is command. All forces retreat to safe zones. Do not engage the enemy. Repeat, do not engage." But Minho couldn't just run. An old man was trapped under some concrete nearby, calling for help. The aliens hadn't seen him yet, but they were getting closer. Minho took a deep breath and ran toward the old man. "I'm here, grandfather," he whispered. "I'll get you out." The concrete was heavy, but Minho managed to lift it enough for the old man to crawl out. Just as they started to move away, one of the aliens spotted them. The creature raised its weapon. Minho pushed the old man behind another car and faced the alien. He knew his rifle wouldn't hurt it, but he had to try. "Come on," he shouted at the creature. "You want someone to fight?"
"Fight me!"
The alien tilted its head as if confused by Minho's bravery. Then it fired. General Tektar stood in his command ship, watching Earth burn through the large windows. His species, the Valkans, had conquered many worlds. Earth was supposed to be easy, just another planet full of weak creatures who couldn't fight back. "Report," he ordered his second in command. "The major cities are 60% destroyed, General. The humans are retreating to underground shelters as expected. Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields." Tektar nodded. Humans were like all the other species they had wiped out. They fought at first, then they hid, then they died. It was always the same pattern. "How long until complete cleansing?" he asked. 48 hours, General. Maybe less." "Good. The High Command wants this world empty and ready for colonization. These humans are nothing but pests." But as Tektar watched the burning cities below, he didn't notice something important. In the forests and mountains around the world, animals were watching too. Bears, wolves, tigers, lions, they saw the purple lights and heard the human screams. And something deep inside them began to change. Captain So Young led her squad through the ruins of Busan. They were trying to reach the port where evacuation ships were supposed to be waiting. But when they got there, they found only burning metal and bodies floating in the water. "The ships are gone," reported Sergeant Jamin. "Looks like the aliens hit them first." So Young felt her heart sink. They had been hoping to get the civilians to safety on those ships. Now there was nowhere to run. "Captain, look at this," called Private Wu Jin. He was standing near some trees at the edge of the port. "The animals, they're acting strange." So Young walked over to see what he meant. There were dozens of dogs, cats, and even some wild boars gathered at the tree line. They weren't running away from the explosions and fires. Instead, they were all looking toward the city, toward the alien ships. Maybe they're just scared, So Young said. But something about the way the animals stood made her feel uneasy. They looked like they were waiting for something. Dr. Hai-Jin was one of the few scientists still alive in the research facility outside Seoul. She had been studying animal behavior for 20 years, and what she was seeing on her computer screens didn't make sense. All around the world, her research stations were sending the same reports. Animals weren't running away from the alien attacks. They were moving toward them. Predators that normally avoided each other were gathering in groups. Even more strange, they seemed to be communicating in ways she had never seen before. "This is impossible," she whispered, looking at video feeds from cameras hidden in forests around the world. "Wolves and bears don't work together. Big cats are solitary hunters. None of this should be happening." But it was happening, and as she watched the feeds, Hyejin saw something that made her blood run cold. A massive grizzly bear looked directly into one of her cameras. For a moment, it seemed like the bear was looking right at her. Then it turned and walked away. But not before she saw something in its eyes that shouldn't have been there. Intelligence, purpose, and anger. The first day of the invasion ended with most of Earth's major cities in ruins. Millions of humans were dead or missing. The aliens had barely lost any soldiers. By all accounts, it was a complete victory for the Vulcans. But in the wild places of Earth, something was stirring. Something that would soon teach the aliens that they had made a terrible mistake. They had come to Earth expecting to fight humans. They had no idea what else was waiting for them. Dr. Young-soo had been hiding in Yellowstone Park for 3 days when he saw the impossible. The marine biologist had come to the park to study fish in the rivers, but the alien invasion had trapped him there. Now he was living in a small cave, eating berries and drinking stream water. He was checking his equipment when he heard the roar. It was deep and loud, unlike anything he had ever heard before. Young-soo carefully looked out from his hiding spot and saw a massive grizzly bear standing on a hill about 50 meters away. The bear had been hurt. Young-soo could see burn marks on its fur where alien weapons had hit it. But instead of running away or hiding like any normal animal would do, the bear was standing tall and looking toward the sky where alien ships were flying. Then the bear did something that made Young-soo's heart stop. It looked directly at him, not just in his direction, but right at him, as if it knew exactly where he was hiding. The bear's eyes were different somehow. They looked smart, too smart. The bear opened its mouth and let out another roar. This time Young-soo understood that it wasn't just a roar. It was a call, a message. And from somewhere far away, other bears answered back. "That's not possible," Young-soo whispered to himself. "Bears don't do that." But as he watched, the bear nodded at him. Actually nodded like a human would. Then it turned and walked away into the forest. On the other side of the world, Captain So Young was leading her squad through the mountains of Canada. They were trying to reach a radio station where they could call for help. The group included 8 soldiers and about 20 civilians they had rescued from a destroyed town. The weather was getting worse. Snow was falling hard, and the temperature was dropping fast. Some of the older civilians were having trouble walking. So Young knew they had to find shelter soon or people would start dying from the cold. "Captain, there's a problem," called Sergeant Jae-ho from the front of the group. "Alien patrol ahead. Looks like 6 of them heading this way." So Young cursed under her breath. They were trapped on a narrow mountain path. There was nowhere to hide, and they couldn't fight 6 aliens with their small weapons. The civilians would be slaughtered. "Everyone get down," she ordered quietly. "Stay silent." The alien patrol was getting closer. So Young could see their tall, insect-like shapes moving through the snow. In a few minutes, they would be spotted. Then she heard something that made her look up. A low rumbling sound was coming from the mountain above them. At first, she thought it might be thunder, but the sound was getting louder and more focused. A huge polar bear appeared at the top of the ridge above the alien patrol. The bear was bigger than any polar bear So Young had ever seen in pictures. Its white fur was thick and perfect, and it moved with a grace that seemed impossible for such a large animal. The bear looked down at the aliens, then at So Young's group. For a moment, their eyes met. So Young felt like the bear was studying her, understanding who she was and what she was protecting. Then the bear did something incredible. It deliberately stepped on a large pile of snow and rocks. The movement triggered an avalanche that came crashing down the mountainside. The aliens tried to run, but the avalanche was too fast. Tons of snow and ice buried them completely. In seconds, the threat was gone. So Young stared up at the ridge where the bear had been, but it was already gone. Before it disappeared, though, she could have sworn it nodded at her, just like a human might do after helping a friend. Dr. Hyojin was going crazy trying to understand what she was seeing. Her research computers were filled with reports from all over the world, and none of it made sense according to everything she knew about animal behavior. In the Amazon rainforest, jaguars were working together in groups of 20 or 30. These were animals that normally lived alone and only came together to mate. Now they were hunting alien patrols like a coordinated military unit. In Africa, lions and cheetahs were sharing territory and coordinating attacks. Elephants were moving in formations that looked like battle strategies. Even hippopotamuses were leaving their rivers to attack alien ground forces. "Look at this," she said to her assistant, Dr. Minji, pointing at a video from Australia. "Saltwater crocodiles are somehow getting onto land and attacking alien vehicles. Crocodiles shouldn't be able to survive out of water for more than a few minutes." Minji shook her head. "It gets stranger. We're getting reports from the ocean research stations. Great white sharks are beaching themselves on purpose, then somehow surviving on land long enough to attack aliens near the coast. It's like they've learned to breathe air." Heejin pulled up more data on her computer. "The pattern is the same everywhere. Predator species that normally compete with each other are working together. They're using tactics that should be impossible for animals to understand. And look at this." She showed Minji a graph of brain activity measurements from animals around the world. Every predator species is showing increased brain activity. Not just a little increase, massive changes. It's like their intelligence has multiplied overnight. "How is that possible?" Minji asked. "I don't know," Heejin admitted, "but I have a theory. What if the animals are responding to something we can't detect? What if human suffering or fear is somehow triggering changes in their biology?" In the ruins of Tokyo, Lieutenant Kite was documenting everything he saw. As a military intelligence officer, it was his job to record unusual enemy activity. But what he was seeing wasn't enemy activity. It was something else entirely. A pack of wolves had surrounded an alien patrol in what used to be a shopping district. But these wolves weren't acting like normal wolves. They were using tactics. One wolf would howl in a way that sounded exactly like a human crying for help. When the aliens moved to investigate, other wolves would attack from behind. The wolves had learned to use the aliens' curiosity against them. Even more amazing, the wolves seemed to understand that the aliens had better hearing than humans. They would make their fake human calls just loud enough for the aliens to hear, but not so loud that it would seem suspicious. "They're learning." Kaite spoke into his recording device. "The animals are studying alien behavior and adapting their hunting strategies. This shouldn't be possible, but I'm watching it happen." As he watched, a large tiger appeared from one of the destroyed buildings. The tiger looked at the wolves, and somehow they seemed to communicate without making any sound. Then the tiger moved to a different position, blocking the aliens' escape route. Kaite had studied military tactics for years. What he was watching was a perfect ambush strategy. The wolves were the distraction, the tiger was the blocking force, and there were probably other predators he couldn't see moving into position for the final attack. Day 4 of the invasion, he continued recording. "Animal behavior has changed completely. They're not just defending territory anymore. They're hunting the invaders with intelligence and coordination that rivals human military units." Engineer Tae Hyun was trapped in a research facility outside Seoul when he made his discovery. He had been trying to repair the facility's communication equipment when he noticed something strange on the security cameras. Bears were using tools. A group of brown bears had found some metal pipes from a destroyed building. Instead of ignoring them, the bears were picking up the pipes and using them as weapons against alien drones. They held the pipes in their front paws like clubs and swung them with perfect timing to knock the flying machines out of the air. "This is Engineer Tae Hyun, Day 5 of invasion," he recorded on his emergency log. "I am witnessing unprecedented animal behavior. Bears are using tools as weapons. Repeat, bears are using manufactured tools in combat situations." But that wasn't the strangest part. As Tae Hyun watched, one of the bears picked up a broken alien weapon. Instead of just hitting things with it, the bear seemed to be studying it. The bear turned the weapon over in its paws, examining it from different angles. Then the bear pointed the weapon at an alien drone and somehow activated it. The purple energy beam shot out and destroyed the drone perfectly. Impossible, Taehyun whispered. The bear just learned to use alien technology. In less than 5 minutes, it figured out how to operate a weapon designed by a completely different species. As night fell on the 5th day of the invasion, General Tektar reviewed the daily reports in his command ship. The conquest was taking longer than expected. His forces were reporting unusual resistance from Earth's wildlife, but he dismissed it as minor complications. Local fauna proving more aggressive than anticipated, he dictated to his recording device. Recommend increasing patrol weapons to deal with animal interference. Human resistance remains minimal. But Tektar didn't know what was really happening on the ground. He didn't know that Earth's predators were changing, learning, and preparing for war. He didn't understand that every human scream his forces had caused was creating something new and terrifying. All across Earth, in forests and jungles and mountains and plains, the beasts were awakening. They were remembering every human who had died. They were planning revenge, and they were getting smarter by the hour. General Tektar stood in the command center of his ship, looking down at the burned remains of Tokyo. 1 week had passed since the invasion began, and most of Earth's major cities were now under Valkan control. The humans were broken, scattered, and hiding like the weak creatures he had expected them to be. Status report, he ordered his lieutenant. Cleansing operations proceeding as planned, General. We have established control zones in all major population centers. Human resistance is minimal. Tektar nodded with satisfaction. Excellent. The High Command will be pleased. How long until complete planetary cleansing? At current rates, sir, we estimate another 72 hours for total elimination of human presence. Good. Then we can begin preparing the planet for colonization. But as Tektar reviewed the reports, he noticed something odd. Several patrol units had gone missing in the past 2 days. The reports blamed equipment failures or human ambushes, but something about the pattern bothered him. Lieutenant, why are we losing more patrols in wilderness areas than in human population centers? Unknown, sir. Possibly the humans are using guerrilla tactics in areas they know better. Tektar dismissed the concern. Humans were weak and primitive. A few missing patrols were just minor complications. He had no idea how wrong he was. Lieutenant Kite crouched in the rubble of a collapsed subway station in Seoul, watching something that made his hands shake. Through a crack in the concrete, he could see a Valkan patrol walking down what used to be a busy street. The patrol consisted of 6 aliens, each carrying their deadly purple beam weapons. They moved in standard formation, scanning for any signs of human life. They looked confident and unafraid. They should have been afraid. Kite heard the sound first, a low howl that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. It sounded like a human child crying for help, the kind of sound that would make any person want to rush to the rescue. The Valkan patrol leader stopped and tilted his insect-like head, listening. The cry came again, closer this time. It was coming from an alley between 2 destroyed buildings. The aliens moved toward the sound, weapons ready. They were being careful, but they were also curious. Kite had noticed that the Valkan seemed to enjoy hunting humans who were still alive. The crying child would be an irresistible target. As the patrol entered the alley, Kite saw movement on the rooftops above them. Dark shapes were moving silently from building to building. At first he thought they might be human resistance fighters, but then he saw them clearly. Wolves. At least a dozen of them, each one larger than any wolf he had ever seen. They moved across the broken rooftops like shadows, positioning themselves directly above the alien patrol. The crying sound came again from deeper in the alley. The aliens moved forward, following the sound. They didn't look up. That was their mistake. The wolves dropped from the rooftops all at once, landing on the aliens with perfect timing. But these weren't normal wolf attacks. The wolves seemed to know exactly where the aliens' weak spots were. They went for joints in the armor, gaps in the protective shells, places where their teeth could do the most damage. The aliens tried to use their weapons, but the wolves were too fast and too smart. They attacked in patterns, always staying behind cover, always moving before the purple beams could find them. In less than 2 minutes, the entire patrol was dead. Kite watched in amazement as the wolves gathered around their victims. Instead of eating the bodies like normal predators would, they examined the alien weapons. One wolf picked up a weapon in its mouth and carried it away, as if it was taking it somewhere specific. Day 7, Kaite whispered into his recording device. The wolves are not just hunting the aliens. They're studying them, learning from them, and they're taking their weapons. As the wolves disappeared into the ruins, Kaite heard that crying sound again. But now he realized it wasn't coming from a human child. It was coming from one of the wolves. They had learned to mimic human voices perfectly. Captain Dong Hyun was leading a group of survivors through the mountains outside Denver when they walked into a trap. His team consisted of 12 people, 8 soldiers and 4 civilians, including Dr. Sora, who had escaped from Seoul with medical supplies. They were trying to reach the government bunkers hidden deep in the mountains. Intelligence reports said there might still be officials alive there, people who could coordinate what was left of Earth's resistance. But the Vulcans had found their trail. "Contact front," shouted Sergeant Yu Jin, multiple aliens blocking the path ahead. Dong Hyun could see them through his binoculars. At least 15 Vulcan soldiers were positioned across the mountain trail, weapons aimed directly at his group. There was no way around them. The trail was narrow, with steep cliffs on both sides. "We're trapped," whispered Dr. Sora. "We can't fight that many." Dong Hyun was about to order a retreat when the ground began to shake. At first he thought it might be an earthquake. But the shaking was too rhythmic, too deliberate. Something huge was moving through the forest toward them. The trees began to bend and break as something massive pushed through them. The Vulcan soldiers turned their weapons toward the sound, momentarily forgetting about the humans. Then it appeared. The grizzly bear that emerged from the forest was the largest bear Dong Hyun had ever seen. It stood at least 4 meters tall on its hind legs and was covered in thick dark fur. But the most terrifying thing about it wasn't its size, it was its eyes. The bear's eyes showed intelligence that no animal should possess. As it looked at the Vulcan soldiers, Dong Hyun could see calculation in those eyes, planning, strategy. The bear dropped to all fours and charged toward the aliens with incredible speed. The Vulcans opened fire, their purple beams striking the bear's thick fur, but somehow the massive creature kept moving. As the bear reached the first alien, it didn't just attack randomly like a wild animal. Instead, it grabbed the alien's weapon arm and twisted it with surgical precision, breaking the joint and taking the weapon. Then it used the alien's own weapon against its companions. Dong Hyun watched in amazement as the bear fired the purple energy beams with perfect accuracy. It moved from cover to cover, using tactics that would have impressed a trained soldier. The bear seemed to understand exactly how the weapons worked and how to use the terrain to its advantage. Within minutes, all 15 Vulcan soldiers were dead. The bear then turned to look at Dong Hyun's group. For a moment, nobody moved. The massive creature studied them with those intelligent eyes as if deciding what to do with them. Then the bear did something incredible. It stood up on its hind legs and gave what looked like a military salute. After that, it pointed toward the path ahead, indicating that it was safe to continue. As the bear disappeared back into the forest, Dr. Sora spoke in a shaking voice. "That bear, it saved us. It knew we were human and it saved us. It did more than that," Dong Hyun replied, still staring at where the bear had vanished. "It fought like a soldier, like it had military training." Dr. Minji was working alone in her research station in Antarctica when she made the discovery that would change everything. The xenobiologist had been studying the global changes in animal behavior, trying to understand what was happening to Earth's wildlife. Her computer screens showed data from research stations all over the world. Every graph, every measurement, every observation pointed to the same impossible conclusion. "This can't be right," she muttered, checking her calculations for the 10th time. But the data doesn't lie. According to her measurements, every predator species on Earth was showing brain activity levels that were far beyond normal. But it wasn't just increased intelligence, it was something much more profound. The animals were connected. Brain scans from wolves in Canada showed activity spikes at the exact same time as brain scans from tigers in India. Lions in Africa were displaying behavioral changes that matched perfectly with bears in Alaska. It was as if every predator on the planet was sharing information instantly. "It's like a global neural network," Minji spoke into her recording device. "Every predator species is connected to every other predator species. They're sharing knowledge, strategies, even memories. When one animal learns something new, they all learn it." But there was something else in the data that made her blood run cold. The connection wasn't random, it had a purpose. Every single predator on Earth was focused on the same goal: protecting humans and destroying the aliens. The animals weren't just evolving, they were becoming a single planet-wide intelligence dedicated to one mission. As Minji studied the data more closely, she realized something that terrified her. The changes had started the moment the first human screamed in pain during the alien attack. Every cry for help, every death, every moment of human suffering had strengthened the connection between Earth's predators. Humanity's pain had awakened something in Earth's biosphere. Something that remembered every kindness humans had shown to animals over thousands of years. Something that was now ready to repay that debt. "The animals aren't just fighting for us," Minji whispered. "They're fighting as us. They've become Earth's immune system, and the aliens are the disease they're trying to eliminate." Outside her research station, Minji heard a low rumble. Through her window, she saw a massive polar bear approaching through the snow. The massive grizzly bear stood in the center of what used to be Central Park in New York, surrounded by the twisted remains of Vulcan war machines. Engineer Tae-hyun watched from his hiding place in a destroyed museum, trying to understand what he was seeing. This was the same bear he had seen using alien weapons a week ago. But now it was different, bigger, smarter, and it wasn't alone. Around the bear, dozens of other predators had gathered. Wolves, mountain lions, even a few tigers that must have escaped from the zoo. They weren't fighting each other like they should have been. Instead, they were organized like a military unit, with the great bear clearly serving as their commander. The bear picked up a broken alien communicator with surprising gentleness. It examined the device carefully, turning it over in its massive paws. Then impossibly, it began to manipulate the controls. Tae-hyun heard static, then voices speaking in the alien language. The bear was somehow using the communicator to listen to Vulcan military communications. As it listened, its dark eyes showed understanding that made Tae-hyun's skin crawl. When the transmission ended, the bear turned to the other animals. It made a series of low sounds, not quite roars, not quite growls. The other predators responded with their own calls. They were talking to each other. "Day 12 of invasion," Tae-hyun whispered into his recorder. "The animals are not just using our weapons and alien technology. They're communicating with complex language. They're planning." As he watched, the bear began drawing patterns in the dirt with one of its claws. The patterns looked like maps. Battle plans. The other animals gathered around to study the drawings like soldiers receiving orders from their general. When the briefing was finished, the animals split into groups and moved out in different directions. Each group moved with purpose and coordination that would have made human special forces jealous. The great bear was the last to leave. Before it disappeared into the ruins, it looked directly at Tae-hyun's hiding spot and nodded. A greeting between allies. Dr. Young-soo had been following whale pods off the coast of California when the ocean war began. As a marine biologist, he had spent years studying whale behavior, but nothing had prepared him for what he witnessed that day. The Vulcan fleet had positioned their naval forces in the Pacific, using the ocean as a base for their aerial attacks on the western United States. Their ships floated on the surface like metallic islands, protected by energy shields that nothing should have been able to penetrate. Young-soo was watching from a research boat when the water around the alien ships began to change. At first it was just a slight disturbance like a gentle current. Then the disturbance became a pattern. Whales were rising from the depths, but these weren't normal whales. Each one was larger than any whale Young-soo had ever seen. Blue whales the size of aircraft carriers, orcas with intelligence shining in their eyes like black fire, sperm whales that moved with purpose instead of the random patterns of normal sea life. "This is Dr. Young-soo," he spoke into his radio. "I'm observing approximately 50 large cetaceans approaching the alien naval position. Their behavior is unusual. The whales didn't attack immediately. Instead, they began to circle the alien ships in perfect formation. As they swam, they were making sounds. Whale songs that were more complex than anything Young-soo had ever recorded. But the songs weren't random. They were coordinated. Each whale was contributing to a single massive sound that grew louder and more focused with each passing minute. Then Young-soo realized what they were doing. The whales were using their songs as weapons. The combined sound waves from 50 giant whales created a focused acoustic attack that no technology could defend against. The energy shields around the alien ships began to flicker and fail. Metal hulls started to crack under the pressure of the sonic assault. When the shields collapsed, the whales stopped singing and began their physical attack. But they didn't just ram the ships randomly. Each whale targeted specific parts of the alien vessels: communication arrays, weapon systems, engine compartments. They knew exactly where to strike for maximum damage. Impossible, Young-Soo breathed. They understand the alien ship designs. They know how to disable them. As the alien ships began to sink, Young-Soo saw something that made him question everything he thought he knew about marine life. A massive blue whale surfaced near his boat and looked directly at him with one enormous eye. In that eye, Young-Soo saw recognition, intelligence, and something that looked almost like a salute before the whale disappeared back into the depths. Captain. So Young had been leading resistance operations in the Canadian wilderness for 2 weeks when she witnessed the air war begin. Her group had grown to include over 100 survivors, both military and civilian, hiding in a network of caves in the Rocky Mountains. They were planning a raid on a Vulcan supply depot when the sky filled with wings, eagles, hawks, falcons, owls. Every bird of prey in North America seemed to be converging on their location. But they weren't fleeing from the aliens. They were preparing for battle. "Captain, look at this," called Sergeant J-Ho, pointing his binoculars toward a distant mountain peak. "The birds, they're organizing themselves." So Young took the binoculars and looked where he was pointing. On the mountaintop, hundreds of raptors were perched in perfect military formation. At the center of the group was a golden eagle that was larger than any eagle she had ever seen. As she watched, the giant eagle spread its wings and let out a cry that echoed across the mountains. Every other bird responded with their own calls, creating a sound like a battle hymn. Then they took flight. The formation of raptors rose into the sky like a living cloud. They moved with precision that matched the best Air Force squadrons, each bird knowing exactly where it needed to be. High above, Vulcan fighter ships were patrolling the area, searching for human resistance groups. The pilots had no idea what was rising toward them from below. The first attack came from the Golden Eagle itself. The massive bird flew directly at the lead alien fighter, moving faster than should have been possible. Instead of simply striking the ship, the Eagle somehow generated an electromagnetic pulse that disabled the craft's systems. As the alien ship fell from the sky, the other raptors swarmed the remaining fighters. They didn't just attack randomly. They coordinated their strikes to target specific parts of each ship: communications, weapons, engines. Within minutes, the entire alien patrol was grounded. "The birds," So Young whispered in amazement. "They're fighting like an air force." But the most incredible thing happened after the battle was over. The Golden Eagle flew directly to So Young's position and landed on a rock in front of her. It looked at her with eyes that held unmistakable intelligence, then dropped something at her feet. It was a Vulcan communication device, intact and undamaged. The Eagle had brought her a gift: intelligence that could help the human resistance. As it flew away, So Young realized that the animals weren't just fighting for humans. They were fighting with humans. Admiral Yu Jin stood on the bridge of the last functioning human naval vessel, watching radar contacts that shouldn't exist. His destroyer was hidden in a fjord in Norway, one of the few places on Earth where humans still had any military presence. "Admiral, you need to see this," called his radar operator, Lieutenant Min-ki. "We're getting contacts rising from the ocean floor. Hundreds of them, moving toward the alien fleet." Yujin looked at the radar screen and felt his heart race. The contacts were huge, larger than submarines, but moving in organic patterns. As he watched, they began to surface. "Whales," he breathed. "Those are whales." But as the contacts reached the surface, Yujin realized they weren't just whales. Mixed in with the cetaceans were sharks, dolphins, even massive squid. Every major predator in the ocean was rising to attack the Vulcan fleet. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," reported the communications officer. It's whale song, but there's a pattern to it." "Put it on speakers," Yujin ordered. The bridge filled with the deep, haunting songs of whales. But as Yujin listened, he began to hear something else in the music: structure, language, and underneath it all, something that sounded almost like coordinates, whispered Lieutenant Min-ki. "They're singing coordinates." The whale songs were giving them the exact positions of every alien ship in the fleet. The ocean's predators were providing intelligence to help the human military target their enemies. "All stations," Yujin ordered. Prepare for coordinated attack. We're going to work with our new allies. As his ship prepared for battle, Yujin watched the ocean around them come alive with Earth's sea creatures. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity wasn't fighting alone. General Thektar paced in his command center, studying reports that made no sense. In the 2 weeks since the invasion began, his supposedly superior forces had suffered losses that were completely unprecedented. Explain to me again how we lost an entire armored division to Earth wildlife, he demanded of his intelligence officer. Sir, the reports are consistent across all sectors. Large predator species are displaying organized behavior and using advanced tactics against our forces. They appear to have learned to operate our technology and are coordinating attacks across vast distances. Thektar stopped pacing. Are you telling me that animals are outsmarting my soldiers? The Vulcan High Command Fleet emerged from hyperspace like a dark storm cloud, their massive dreadnoughts blocking out the stars. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the blue and green world that had somehow resisted his empire's conquest. General Thektar, he spoke into his communicator, report on planetary status. From the surface, Thektar's voice carried a tension that Vextar had never heard before. Admiral, the situation is complicated. Human resistance has proven more difficult than anticipated. Impossible. Our intelligence reports show humans have primitive technology and no unified military capability. Sir, the resistance isn't coming from humans alone. The planet's biological systems have become hostile. Vexatar's mandibles clicked with irritation. Explain. Native predator species have developed coordinated behaviors and are actively attacking our forces. They appear to have learned to use our technology and are protecting human populations. Vexatar stared at the transmission device in disbelief. In 300 years of conquest, the Vulcan Empire had never encountered anything like this. Prepare the extinction fleet, he ordered his bridge crew. If the planet's biosphere has become hostile, we'll sterilize it completely and start over. But as his ships moved into bombardment position, Vextar had no idea what was rising from Earth's oceans to meet them. Commander He Jin crawled out of the Seoul underground bunkers for the first time in 3 weeks. The city above was a wasteland of twisted metal and ash, but something incredible was happening in the ruins. Animals were everywhere. Not just a few scattered survivors, but thousands of them. Bears walked through the streets alongside wolves. Tigers sat calmly next to groups of lions. Species that should never coexist were moving together like parts of a single organism. And they were all looking up at the sky, where the alien fleet was gathering for what looked like a final attack. Brother, called Dr. Sora, emerging from the bunker behind him. What's happening? Why are all the animals here? Heijin shook his head in wonder. I think they're protecting us. All of them. The entire planet is protecting us. As they watched, a massive Asian elephant approached them through the rubble. The elephant was larger than any Haijin had ever seen, with intelligence burning in its ancient eyes. Scars from alien weapons marked its thick hide, but it moved with dignity and purpose. The elephant stopped in front of Heijin and gently placed its trunk on his shoulder. The gesture was unmistakably a salute, one soldier acknowledging another. Thank you, Heijin whispered, placing his hand on the elephant's trunk. Thank you for everything. The elephant trumpeted once, a sound that was answered by roars, howls, and calls from every corner of the ruined city. Then it turned and walked toward the center of Seoul, where other animals were gathering for what looked like a final stand. High above Earth's atmosphere, something impossible was happening. Dr. Youngsu watched from a research station that had somehow survived the orbital bombardment, using powerful telescopes to observe what was occurring in space. Whales were flying. Not just one or two, but hundreds of them. Great blue whales, orcas, sperm whales. Earth's ocean giants were somehow launching themselves into space on pillars of water that defied every law of physics Youngsu knew. This is impossible, he breathed, adjusting his telescope's focus. Water can't behave like this. Animals can't survive in space. But as he watched, the whales moved through the vacuum of space as easily as they moved through the ocean. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving. Their bodies seemed to have adapted to the hostile environment in ways that should have taken millions of years of evolution. The whales reached the alien fleet and began their attack with the same coordinated precision they had shown in Earth's oceans. They tore through the massive alien ships like living torpedoes, targeting critical systems with surgical accuracy. But they weren't alone. Rising from Earth on impossible winds came the raptors, eagles, hawks, and falcons that had somehow learned to fly in the vacuum of space. They swarmed around the smaller alien fighters like a living storm of feathers and fury. "The entire biosphere is fighting," Young-Soo whispered into his recorder. "Earth itself has become a weapon." Admiral Vextar watched his fleet die around him with growing horror. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. His ships, protected by energy shields that could stop any known weapon, were being torn apart by creatures that shouldn't even exist. "Sir," called his tactical officer, "we've lost 60% of the fleet. These creatures are using some kind of technology we don't understand." "They're animals," Vextar roared. "How can animals defeat our technology?" "Sir, I don't think they're just animals anymore. There's something else, something we've never encountered." As if responding to his words, a massive blue whale appeared outside the bridge window. The creature was somehow floating in space, looking directly at Vextar with eyes that held intelligence far beyond any animal he had ever seen. The whale opened its mouth and sang. Even through the vacuum of space, somehow the song reached the bridge. It was beautiful and terrible, a sound that spoke of Earth's oceans and forests, of the bond between humans and the creatures that shared their world. It was also a warning. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It's coming from the animals themselves. Put it through." The bridge filled with a symphony of animal calls, roars, howls, songs, and cries from every species on Earth. But underneath the chaos, there was structure, language, and slowly, impossibly, the sounds began to form words in the Vulcan language. "Leave," the voice said, spoken by 1,000 different creatures in perfect unison. "You came to our world. You hurt our humans. Now leave or face the consequences." Vextar stared at his communications console in shock. "The animals. They're talking to us." "Yes, sir." "And, sir, I think they've been learning our language by listening to our communications." Before Vextar could respond, his ship shook violently. Through the window, he saw sharks moving through space like missiles, their jaws somehow able to bite through the hull of his dreadnought. "Sir," called his engineering officer. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 15. These creatures are somehow surviving in vacuum and attacking our ship directly." Admiral Yujin stood on the deck of his destroyer, watching the most beautiful and terrifying sight he had ever seen. The entire Earth seemed to be rising into space to defend itself. Not just the animals, but pillars of ocean water, clouds of earth and rock, even what looked like fragments of forest floating impossibly in the vacuum. "Admiral," called his communications officer, "we're receiving transmissions from all over the planet. Every surviving human military unit is reporting the same thing." "The animals are coordinating with us. What do you mean?" "Sir, they're giving us targeting data, tactical information. They're telling us exactly where to strike the alien ships for maximum damage." Yujin looked at his tactical display and saw streams of data coming from whale songs, bird calls, and even the roars of land predators. The information was incredibly detailed. Ship layouts, weapon placements, shield frequencies. "How could they possibly know all this?" he asked. "Sir, I think they've been studying the aliens since the invasion began, learning everything about them. They know more about alien technology than we do." As if to prove his point, a pod of orcas appeared near his ship, somehow swimming through space itself. The lead orca approached his vessel and began making sounds that his computer translated into precise coordinates for the alien flagship. "All weapons, target those coordinates," Yujin ordered. "Fire everything we have." His ship's missiles launched in perfect coordination with attacks from Earth's spaceborne creatures. The combined assault overwhelmed the alien flagship's defenses and sent it spinning helplessly toward Earth's atmosphere. Captain So Young watched the final battle from her position in the Canadian mountains. Around her, every predator in North America had gathered. Bears, wolves, mountain lions, eagles, even creatures she didn't recognize that seemed to have evolved far beyond their original forms. At the center of the gathering stood the great grizzly bear she had seen before, now grown to enormous size. The bear was somehow communicating with every other creature simultaneously, coordinating a planet-wide defense through some kind of shared consciousness. "They're all connected," she whispered to Sergeant Jeho. Every animal on Earth is part of the same mind now. How is that possible? I don't know. But I think it happened because of us. Because of what the aliens did to us. Our pain somehow awakened something in Earth's biosphere. As they watched, the Great Bear looked up at the sky where the alien fleet was burning and let out a roar that seemed to shake the mountains. Every other creature joined in, creating a sound that carried across the entire planet. It was a victory cry. A declaration that Earth would never surrender its children to any invader. Aboard the dying flagship, Admiral Vexitar made a decision that would have been unthinkable just hours before. He activated his ship's emergency broadcast system and sent a message on all frequencies. "This is Admiral Vexitar of the Vulcan High Command," he announced, his voice shaking with defeat. I request terms of surrender.